Motokurche elections and what on earth happened here, please let me know. This is a complete mystery.
There was another instance where this time there was an independent who would get more votes they were expecting. So the opposition had put a lot of candidates with the same name so that people can get confused whom to vote.
Which opposition?
I'm not sure about the opposition.
Yeah, no, I mean, they certainly seem to have gone overboard in this. Uh, so this was pretty, and this has never happened since. Okay, now the record of 1,000 victories, sorry, 1,000 candidates, it's just never been matched or beaten in any election in India for sure. I don't know about elections outside of India. So while we've been going through this, I guess you'd have gathered that at gramna.com/election, which is, I'm just running a local version of this, we've got, where is this called? At gramna.com/election, we've got the visuals for a reasonably large number of election scenarios, ranging from on the assembly election side, for instance, what was the history of every single assembly election that has happened. So starting from 1951 by state, who's won when across all of the states. So you can see that BJP really has captured power in about a little more than half a dozen states and seems to have some staying power there. But it's really Congress that is all over the place. And if you look at the history of elections, it's, and even till date, India's probably a one-party country. CPM has had its presence in a few states and has stayed there. JNP existed for a temporary period of time. DMK and ADMK in just 2 states, and really 1 state. The other is Pondicherry. And so on. One can start drilling down into each one of these. So if you want to see what happened in the latest elections in this place, then out of the how many ever 52 parties that contested in AP, and the 3,655 candidates, that was a breakup by candidate, and that was the result by each of these parties. And you can search for any specific party, drill down, look at the results of that election, look at the history of the elections in that particular state, and so on. I'm not planning to go into the details of what the elections, the visualizations of this. You can check those out on the website. What I wanted to convey was a couple of things. One, that all of the data that is behind this is sourced from just one source, the Election Commission website, which has publicly available data. And it was not particularly easy, but not particularly difficult to get this data out either. The second part of what I'm going to talk about is how did we get the data out, and how could you use the data that we've already extracted, and what tools you could use to create visualizations of this nature. So let's dive into that. So let's talk about where we got all of this data from. So the Election Commission website has all of this data in the form of, well, in a variety of formats. So if you just go to ECI, I probably already have this somewhere. Yeah. So eci.nic.in/whatever/election statistics, you will be able to find this page even with a simple search. And what you have here are the statistical reports of the Lok Sabha elections as well as the assembly elections, every single election held till date. The good part is that it exists. The bad part is that most of it is in the form of PDF files. Okay. To give you a sense of what I mean by PDF files, so this is what one of the pages looks like. Okay. For any one of the assembly elections, you have something in the order of 300 odd pages, which multiply by the number of years, multiply by the number of states. We're talking about few tens of thousands of pages of PDF to be scraped, and it's all in a tabular form. There are Excel files, however, it says the data here has been made available on the basis of data entry done by the counting staff at the counting center. So that's a disclaimer. Still, better than anything else that we have. There are a number of errors here as well. What kinds of errors do you have? Well, party names are misspelled. Okay, so now this incidentally is probably not the Election Commission's fault. There is a comedian in Tamil movies, a guy called Vivek, so who sings an entire song based on the abbreviations of party names. So it goes about saying Mamaka, Dimuka, Tamaka, Pemaka, Pluvada. Now, if the party's name is Mamaka, which is what it is in Tamil. Now, am I supposed to spell it as MMK or MDMK or MAMAK? Bit confusing, but they're all the same party. The Election Commission also has different versions of the same party's name in different years. The party's name itself can change. It is the same party. The Anna Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, for instance, became the Anna Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, and it for a long time used to be Anna Dravida Kazhagam. So it's the same party. Now, you could also have a case like the Congress, Indira, which, when Indira Gandhi split, pretty much the entire party went with her. So it begs the question, is that a separate party or is that the parent party? And I think most of us would agree that the part that went with Indira Gandhi and was called INCI was the real Congress. Similar things have happened in a variety of other states. So in which case we need to apply the logic of merging these. So that's part of it. Misspellings are extremely common. So this is a relatively simple one where at least you can recognize that Bhadrachalam is spelled in 3 different ways. Some of these misspellings are hopelessly difficult to spot, or once you spotted them, they're very easy to correct. Even state names can be misspelled. So Madhya Pradesh in fact appears with a space and without a space depending on where it appears. So that's a layer of correction that's got to be added. Gender codes can vary. So Punjab, for instance, instead of female F uses W for women. It sticks to men. So it's M and W rather than M and F, whereas most other states have M and F instead. So you've got to know that. The number of columns vary. It's not perfectly standardized. And the format of the files vary across years. But despite all of these problems, the data is available and correctable and has been corrected. And this is available in the DataMeet India Election Data Repository. And the process, and in the interest of repeatability of this analysis, the scrapers that were used to create the underlying data files are also available. So you'll be able to go into the, let me actually go there, github.com slash DataMeet slash India election data. So if I were to take the assembly elections data, now the scraper for this is in the form of an IPython notebook, which talks about how the scraping was done as well. So you go to this site, import all of these libraries, convert from PDF to text, do a lot of things. The results are also here. There's a fair bit of work. Took several people about a month and a half to get this job done. But if you're just interested in the output, there is a file, assembly.csv, that you can pull off of the repository that contains the results of all assembly elections to date. Similarly, there is a repository for all parliamentary elections. There is also a repository for on the list of current constituencies and historical constituencies, a bunch of other things that you will find out here. So do take a look at this repository. That's in terms of what data is readily available. Now, what we've done, you could do just as easily, right? Take this data, scrape it, and many of you have done that. Feel free to share it on the DataMeet forum. You will find that the Election Commission website has what is called a Form 20, which has polling booth wise results for many years for pretty much the entire country. Which means that if you want to know in Bangalore South, for every single polling booth, of which there are a few hundreds, the number of people that voted for each party, it's there as PDFs. And it's a little painful, but you can actually extract it and get extremely granular data out of it. The next question that comes is, okay, now that I've got this, what can I do to process it? And for that, I'd argue that play around with the data in Excel. Some of these, the charts that I put on my slides, like this one for instance, or this one, all of these were created just in Excel, this one as well. Now, as for the maps, you could create those in Excel as well. Let me give you an example. So last Open Data Camp, I spoke about a tool that we've created. Now we've released this as open source. Now this tool can geocode data. So if, for example, pick a constituency name. Sorry? Okay, do you remember how to spell it?
Malkajgiri.
Okay. And what I'm going to do is on this sheet, I've got a function called Google Geocode, and I'll say this one. And you're right, probably good to add the state name. So I'll say Andhra Pradesh, and that does the geocoding and returns the latitude and longitude for this particular. So which helps in the sense that now if I had a full list of constituencies, I could just drag this formula and get the job done. So unfortunately, my limits on the API are dwindling. So what I'm going to do is, I'll just show you for a few examples. Okay, so I'm going to take about a dozen constituencies. Okay, so now what I'll do is say equals Google geocode of this particular parliamentary constituency and put a comma next to it and put in the state name. So that gives me the result, and let's drag that for this list. Churn, churn, churn. And what we have now is many of them geocoded with one exception. Madhya Saurashtra seems to have goofed up. There are cases where it will fail. So in some cases you will have to go back to the map, try and spell it in a different way. So you may try, for instance, okay, now the problem is Saurashtra is a pretty old state, no longer exists. So in such cases, for really old data, you'll have trouble. But then, given the, yes please. Oh, thanks. Given the latitude and longitude, question is what can you do? So let me show you what might be possible with this. Okay. So out here, I have the latitude and longitude for all of these constituencies. I'm just going to try and plot these as x and y coordinates, where the x coordinate is nothing but the longitude, and the y coordinate is well, the latitude, effectively, and drag this whole thing out. Now let's take this and insert a scatter plot out here, and it looks like the India map already. Now let's tweak this a little bit. I don't need the grid lines, I don't need this, I don't need this, and obviously the minimum number is somewhere around 60, maybe around 65. So if I take 65 out here, now I get something that I can distort roughly into the shape of an India map, and we don't need the axes out here anymore. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, but it would help if we could put India's boundary inside it. So let's insert a picture of India state map and overlay this around that, and if we just about get our sizing right, then we'll have something that looks pretty close to an India map overlaid with these locations. Now this is a little wider than I'd like, so we move this around. I'm not going to get it to be perfectly positioned. You can get that this can be done. Now these aren't looking too good, so let's right click, format, sorry, move this a bit. Right click on these data points, format the data series. Instead of these diamonds, I want circles, and I want them to be a bit smaller, maybe this size, and they're overlapping. So it would be good to have some amount of transparency on this, maybe a little bit of borders as well, perhaps. And once we've done that, we have the ability to create what is effectively a cartogram. Now you can then start coloring this. You just have different series, each series colored based on which party won, and you have what I showed you earlier, right? Doesn't take, it takes about as much time as I showed you out here. So it's not like the tools are not there either. The tools are in your reach. Sometimes all it takes is just our imagination to figure out what it is that we need. So before I break for questions, I'm just going to end with one thought. See, there is enough data out there on the election side. You've probably got access to enough tools. What we may be missing out is what's the story, how best can we present it. Given this, let's try and get the world to see our election data as best as they could. Thank you. Probably got time for 2 or 3 questions.
So,
Yes, please.
so most of this, whatever work you have done, particularly in terms of scraping, is for historical periods. So let's say the results of this year's election is coming up. Will a similar kind of PDF be there? How much time will it take for it to be there? And how, or do we need to do any other kind of work in order to do for actual election work, or existing work that you've done will already suffice?
The existing work hopefully will suffice. The code has been written in a way that it will be available across, it works, the same code works across the years. Will the format change this year? I don't know. Okay. Will it be available as Excel this year? I sure hope so. But my guess is that the results will on the ECI website come out a little later than most people would like. You want breaking news. If you want breaking news, you've got to sit in the newsroom. You've got to sit in the... You've got to become an independent candidate, because one of the things that you can do as a candidate is go to the place where they're counting and figure out. So, so speed matters. But if you wanted historical analysis, so 2 months after the elections, if you want to see what happens, the code should work, I think.
One update to that.